Hello everyone, and welcome to the Darkest Hour. I'm your host, Amanda Jane. The new year always brings such promising feelings, the sense of renewal, or whatever you want it to mean, really. I mean, we create our own future, so does a simple switch of the calendar really mean anything? Does the new year really bring those new opportunities, new relationships, new beginnings? Or do we create those for ourselves? I do think that we're more powerful than we give ourselves credit, but I also think the new year is worth celebrating. Maybe not as a time to change everything, but just another time to appreciate everything. Appreciate the chance to view the world again for another year, another day. I really appreciate all of you, and I want to wish you a very happy new year. And also, be safe out there. Okay, well, we've got so much spookiness to get to, so let's get started, shall we? Before the whole pandemic mess took place, my husband Jerry and I took a 5-day cruise from Florida to the Bahamas on Carnival Conquest for New Year's Eve. We had a middle cabin room, small and no windows, so it messed with our sleep schedule. Personally, I wasn't too intrigued by open water, but Jerry thinks he was a sailor in a past life. This one, however, he's an account coordinator for a law firm in Fort Worth. So I thought we'd indulge his passion, and what a better way than for the new year, which also lands close to our wedding anniversary in January. Unfortunately, I'll have to insist upon it being our last cruise that we ever take. The trip itself was beautiful. The ship was clean, the walkways and rooms were spacious, and our room even had a small hot tub inside. Probably better than all of the hotels I've ever visited, honestly. The first couple of nights, Jerry and I let loose. From sunup to sundown, we were either dancing, drinking, or gambling. At one point, we were doing all three at the same time. Night 3, it's 1 a.m. We spontaneously decide we'd dress snazzy, go to one of the restaurants for some pirate pizza. Jerry's still a little schlitzed from the day drinking, and midway through our meal, he jokingly demands to go out on the deck and smoke a cigar. I oblige, but I tell him that I'll wait for the hostess to come back to let her know that we'll be back. It's 2 minutes from Jerry leaving the table and me reconnecting with him on the deck when I find him talking to a crew member of the ship. Jerry asks if I've got any cash on me because this kid can sell us an eighth. Apparently his operation is relatively lucrative on this boat. If you're ever on an East Coast cruise liner and you meet a man named Xander working on deck, ask about the deals. Xander takes us down to the lowest part of the ship. That's where the crew sleeps and congregates on their off time. Off the bottom step, Jerry stumbles to the railing, clutching his chest like he's having a heart attack. Xander runs for the emergency phone to call for medical assistance, then hangs up and starts running up and down the hallways looking for help. This leaves me to absolutely lose my mind as my husband slumps further to the floor, balancing on one knee before tumbling into the mixed matched patterns of the lower deck carpet. I roll him on his back and I begin CPR until the doctors arrive. By then, I was sure Jerry had passed. He was unresponsive through my resuscitation efforts, and he remained that way when the doctors threw him on a gurney. The gurney was welded to the back of this golf cart-looking thing. The vehicle wasn't large enough to fit us all, so they left me on the first floor deck. I was in shock. It all happened so fast. I didn't know whether to stay there or wait for someone to come get me. or if I should chase after the miniature ambulance that was speeding away. We'd left our phones in our room, but thankfully, I'd recently gotten Jerry's pocket watch fixed. It was going to be a surprise anniversary gift for him. I pulled it out of my purse, and I used it to get some sort of durational sense. It was a little after 3. Moments later, I heard another golf cart zipping down the small corridors towards me. It was another worker from the ship coming to get me. Using multiple sets of ramps, we drive to the 3rd floor where the medical team is working on my husband. Jerry was laid out on a cot with an advanced cardiac life support machine. We'd find out that he didn't suffer from a heart attack. He was electrocuted. Faulty wiring in the wall had fallen and come to rest on the inside portion of the railing that Jerry grabbed. It could have been anybody that night. Jerry was simply the lucky one to discover it when he placed his hand on the railing. Eventually, Jerry becomes conscious again. When his eyes open back up, the first thing he says is, "Do you have my pocket watch?" I say, "Yes." I hand it over to him while explaining my original plan. And then I was like, "Wait, how did you know I had it?" He smiled. I was sort of pissed he'd ruined his surprise. Again, he does that. But really, I was just happy that he was alive. I work at a secluded gas station in the mountains, but I need a change after what happened on New Year's. Ours is the only gas station around, so it's open 24/7, except for Christmas. But even then, we leave the door unlocked, just in case. You really can't be too careful when you're in the middle of nowhere. There's a decent amount of traffic during the warmer months, but we have a small community of locals that keep us afloat through the winter. Our phone line goes down often, and there's no Wi-Fi, but you can usually pick up a couple of bars if you go outside. Unless you have AT&T, then you're probably shit out of luck. I'd been working there for about 2 years before someone actually came in after sunset. She didn't drive up. She just stumbled out of the darkness. It scared the piss out of me. I thought somebody had parked off camera with the intent to rob the place. Instead, it was a young woman. Her boyfriend had kicked her out of his car, but her purse and her phone were left in the back seat. She'd been walking for over an hour. Her face was red, and she was trembling from fear as much as the cold. The coffee seemed to help, and she was able to call her father for a ride, but had we not been open, she would have been frozen out there. That one night was worth staying open for all the others. Not only did it save a life, the girl's dad actually came back to thank me with a very generous check. I didn't want to take it at first, but he was driving a car that cost more than my house, and his suit was definitely worth more than my monthly earnings. I thought about that girl every time I had to work on a holiday. It kept my bitterness in check. You never know when a privileged dipshit is going to toss some poor girl out into the middle of nowhere. I was definitely thinking about her on New Year's. Luckily, I thought to lock the doors that night. Teens like to party in the mountains, and they usually come here for snacks on their way home. The rowdy ones can get pretty destructive, so it's safer to serve them through the window. But drunk teens aren't the reason I'm writing this. It was almost 3 a.m. when a lone figure ran into view. Just like the girl, there'd been no headlights or engine sounds, only silence, and one hooded runner heading straight for the door. I raced over with the keys, ready to unlock it. I was inserting the key when I noticed an age-spotted, almost malformed hand grasp the handle. The long yellow fingernails were filed to sharp points, and my hand froze mid-turn. My My gaze shot upward to the hooded figure, but he was looking down, watching my hand, and I couldn't see his face, only that gnarled hand. The sinking feeling in my gut made me remove the key and take a few steps back. When I did, the man's head shot up, and he was smiling like the Joker. His teeth were as yellow as his fingernails. His lips were so red, he looked like he was wearing makeup. His eyes were bloodshot, and he had scabs all over his face. We made eye contact, and he let out a maniacal laughter that made my head ring. I instinctively covered my ears, and it made the man laugh even harder as he began pulling on the door handle. When it wouldn't open, he knocked on the glass, and each strike left a dark, wet stain that I couldn't distinguish between mud or blood. I stood frozen, barely shaking my head, when the man motioned towards me and made a come here gesture. With my refusal, his laughter instantly died, and his smile turned into a menacing scowl. There was no way I could let the guy in, but I couldn't let him freeze to death out there either. I wanted to call the police, but our landline was down. I couldn't get reception inside. My biggest fear was that he might have a gun or try to break the glass. Hoping to placate him, I grabbed a few hand warmer packs, some chips, and drinks. Then I pushed them out the service window, one by one. It has a dipped tray rather than a drawer, so each item was falling to the ground, ready for the taking. The man stopped banging on the door and looked from me to the pile of growing goods. I slowly moved away, my hands in the air, and watched the guy's eerie Joker smile return as he lunged for the fallen items. For a moment, he was crouched too low to see, but I could hear the chips being opened, the hand warmer packs being snapped. When he rose, his pockets noticeably bulged with the other items. Any relief I felt at his acceptance of my offerings was short-lived. He pressed his forehead against the window and stared right at me with that malicious smile, all while shoveling chips into his mouth. Most fell to the ground, but he either didn't notice or didn't care. He just kept chewing, and that wide fucking grin, it never faltered. I was locked in his gaze for longer than I care to admit, but once I finally broke loose, I knew I needed to stay calm. Without turning my back, I grabbed a pack of cigarettes and slowly placed them into the tray. The man's wild eyes darted back and forth between me and the smokes until he finally reached over and snatched them up, but his forehead never left the glass. His laughter stopped and started over again, like he was restarting a song. It started as a low giggle and steadily rose into an ear-splitting cackle. He had to be on something, a bad batch of something. People just don't behave that way. I stole occasional glances at my phone just to confirm that there was still no service. I didn't know what to do. Aside from handing over merchandise, I wasn't going to give him alcohol, but if free stuff kept him from breaking the glass, yeah, I was prepared to do this all night. The guy stayed like that, face pressed into the glass, laughing like a maniac for almost an hour, before his hands suddenly shot into his bulging pockets and began rummaging around. I feared he had a gun after all, and I almost dove behind the counter, but he only pulled out a Sharpie. He removed the cap with his teeth, began writing on the window in huge childlike letters. First an S, then an M, I, L, and finally an E. Smile. When finished, he nodded his head towards the word and then at totally confused, I did the only thing that I could. I smiled. The moment I did, the man stopped laughing, stepped away from the window, and walked back into the night. I wanted to call the police, but I was still too frightened to go outside. I worried the man would be lurking, just out of view, waiting for his chance to pounce. But I never saw him again. I did warn my boss and coworkers. None of them had ever seen anyone like this guy. We don't know where he could have come from or where he went, but he must have some kind of shelter to survive out there. I guess something about New Year's just brings out the crazies. That's why I won't be taking next year's night shift. I'll quit first. That's a promise. You truly never know what people are capable of. There's no friend who could deliver honest advice more unbiased than an anonymous source. Therefore, my yearning for guidance falls upon you. I'm not big on superstition, and I don't believe in luck. I'm a very traditional girl who believes the world doesn't care if we have a good day or a bad day, and no amount of luck or rabbit feet or four-leaf clovers is going to be able to stop the absurdities of existence, good or bad. That being said, my husband has an aunt who is about 10 or 12 years older than us, and I can confidently say, without a doubt, she has the worst luck I've ever seen. So bad, in fact, that it's truly made me reconsider my beliefs on luck being a thing. Her name is Hannah, and she's one of the nicest women you'll ever meet, which is why I'm so dumbfounded at the situations she gets herself into. Since my marriage into this family back in 2016, I got to watch bad thing after bad thing plague this woman's life. Her business goes under because pipes burst in the building, causing damage way out of their insurance price range. 2 marriages, the last one ending in a horrible divorce. Multiple car accidents. Since knowing her, she's totaled at least 2 cars a year. Over a dozen car wrecks in 7 years. One of which I was riding shotgun with her when some guy ran a stop sign, taking off the front of her car. And would you believe that Hannah's airbag didn't deploy? Instead, the windshield caught her antenna, knocking her out cold for a good 30 seconds. I thought she was dead. The accident left a big gash across her hairline that only an expensive ambulance trip and 13 stitches could fix. Watching all of this misfortune has given me a lot of anxiety to hang out with her over the years. I don't know if I'm just tired of seeing her lose all the time, or if I'm afraid to be affected by her tornado. Last New Year's Eve, Hannah wanted to take us to a bar near her place. My husband and I don't have any plans, so we thought, why not? We meet her at a little tavern called Pop Tops. Our plan was to watch the ball drop from there, but it's packed, so we decide to have a drink, but eventually we head to another bar before midnight. Before we leave, Hannah wants to take a girl's picture with me and tells my husband to take it. Her and I get really close together and smile. He takes a couple of pictures with his phone. Then behind me, I hear, "Did you just take a picture of me?" From my husband's expression looking past us, I can tell that he thinks it's a joke, so he gives a fake chuckle and then looks back down at us. Hannah and I get back in our picture pose, but again, the same loud voice starts shouting from behind us. We turn around and there's a very large, very drunk man pointing across the tables at my husband, yelling obscenities. My husband yells back, "Dude, I'm not taking pictures of you." The angry man pushes past us and gets in my husband's face, screaming that he's a Marine and he's just got back from Afghanistan. Then, in a crowded bar, This guy pulls out one of the biggest knives I've ever seen, and he pushes it against my husband's neck, backing him against the wall. Hannah yells something like, "Stand down, soldier," and then runs up to them. Maureen looks at her and Hannah starts talking him down. She tells him her late husband was a military man. He committed suicide when he got back from overseas. The Marine puts his knife down and releases my husband from against the wall. Then, Hannah and the Marine walk to another part of the bar and start talking. From across the room, I watch as Hannah cries, then the Marine. They hug, and the Marine ends up walking over, apologizing, and then offering to buy my husband a drink. It's getting close to midnight, and we decide that we're going to hit another bar, so we leave. The Marine decides that he's going to head out too. At the exit, we go our separate ways, us three walking right to another bar, and the Marine walking left towards Pop Shot's parking lot. Moments later, we hear a loud motorcycle rev up, heading in our direction. It sounds like it's picking up momentum fast. We're on the sidewalk as this monster Harley rips past us on the road. It's the Marine. He speeds around the corner, and we hear this boom. We all go running to the end of the block to see what just happened. The sight we come upon is black, heavy smoke pouring from a mangled Harley wrapped around a tree, and a body lying a couple of yards further down the sidewalk. Hannah runs to the Marine and starts to call 911 while checking his vitals. We wait while the ambulance arrives to get the Marine. From a distant balcony, we can hear people counting down and cheering. The new year had arrived, and I'm watching Hannah scrub blood off of her arms with water from an Aquafina bottle in the car. None of us felt like partying after that, so we just called it a night. We dropped Hannah off at her place and then drove ourselves home. From the freeway, I watched fireworks ignite the sky and I tried to make the best of it. But this year, I'm really not trying to deal with these shenanigans. Is it Hannah? Are some people cursed to a life of bad luck, regardless if they're good people or not? How do I express my worries to my husband without using the word JINX? The last thing I want to do is bring in another New Year so chaotically. Hannah's already asking if we have plans. Do I just lie? This year, I decided to get a fake tree. Normally, I get no tree, but I just bought a condo and it felt like it was right this year. I got a great deal on a 6-foot-tall one at Home Depot. It's lovely, looks great with the vaulted ceilings. Well, I set this thing up almost 2 months ago, and on Christmas, I noticed that it was not the same tree. I can't really wrap my head around what's happened, but the result is that the lights on the tree were different, and somehow the tree was taller. So this tree, it's one of those pre-decorated ones. Lights, ornaments, the whole thing. This particular one had white lights, blue, silver, and gold ornaments. Lovely. I didn't buy any personalized ornaments as it's technically my first year with a tree. But I do remember the ornaments and lights that it came with for the same reason. The only thing I added was a star to the top, clear silver and gold. But on Christmas, I noticed the lights are blue. I think maybe it's a setting, so I check the plug. I check the box. Nothing to indicate that there should be blue lights on this tree. Furthermore, the ornaments. These ornaments are almost identical, but upon closer inspection, it's clear that they're only silver and blue, no gold. I check the star, the one that I bought to match the tree. It's the same as it was, still including gold in its coloring. but it's clearly sitting up higher than before. This whole thing drives me insane for the longest time, mainly the lights. I'm Googling the tree based on the box, finding absolutely nothing about blue lights or anything. Eventually, as I continue to follow this rabbit hole, I see something that mentions a metallic sticker, one that should be attached to the tree itself, somewhere close to the inside towards the bottom. This sticker has a serial number. I climb under the tree, and I'm already feeling so strange about even touching this tree, but I find the sticker and I search the number. The tree exists, but it's not the tree I bought. From what I can tell online, it wasn't even sold this year. Fast forward to last night. On my way home from work, I decided to take the tree down. I don't want to look at it anymore. I'm going to see about getting my money back. When I get home, the lights are back to white. The ornaments back to blue, silver, and gold. Serial number. The sticker, it's in the same spot, but now it matches that on the box. I almost felt like I had to have dreamt it, but my Google history matches, and there's still a photo on my phone of the other sticker with the other serial number. So, I have no idea what the fuck happened, but I'm going back to no Christmas trees. I hate New Year's. Actually, I hate most holidays, but New Year's is the worst. Somehow, my dates always end up kissing someone else at midnight, even the ones I was actually in a relationship with. Last year was my last straw. I'd been dating the same girl for almost 10 months, and for some weird reason I still can't identify, I believed her when she said she loved me. I also believed her when she said she didn't love her husband anymore. They were separated. I know, I'm an idiot. That's fine. I deserve it. If they were separated, they reconciled on New Year's, but that's not the point. The point, my friends, is that I'm done with it. Some people just aren't meant to find love, and that's okay. I decided this would be the year that I changed the pattern and reclaimed New Year's. I skipped everything, even Christmas. I didn't go to any parties. I didn't watch the ball drop in Times Square. I just sat on the couch with enough liquor to make the pain my bitch, and apparently to hallucinate. I turned my phone off to avoid temptation, put on a Hellraiser marathon, and let the whiskey do its job. Also, it's important to know I live in the middle of nowhere. There's no neighbors, no streetlights, just me in the pitch-dark forest. In the 8 years I've lived here, I've never received a single unexpected guest, until that night. Before the first movie ended, I was well past tipsy and on my way to completely drunk, when someone suddenly knocked at the door. It was loud and rushed. I nearly jumped out of my skin. The couch sits on the same wall, and I felt the vibrations with my whole body. I only panicked for a moment before remembering my phone was off. It made sense that someone might come over if there was an emergency, and that thought pushed me into a different kind of panic. Expecting to see a familiar face, I opened the door mid-knock without bothering to ask who's there, but it was nobody. I stepped out onto the porch and everything was still and silent. It just wasn't possible. There's no way that someone could have ran that fast without making a sound. The porch is 20 years old. It groaned just from stepping outside. And I swear, it was mid-knock. There was just no time. I may have been half drunk, but I wasn't that out of it. Being out there was giving me the creeps, so I hurried back inside, made sure everything was locked. I stopped drinking and made a pot of coffee too. By the time I'd settled down with my first cup, I was almost convinced I imagined the knocking after all. Maybe I'd been drifting off. That's when it happened again. This time, I remained in my seat, sipping and waiting. The knocking continued, slightly louder with each round. I know I wasn't imagining it. I turned my phone on as I quietly approached the door, but there were no missed calls or messages, and it was 11. So who would be out here? My heart dropped into my stomach as I recalled countless hours of true crime podcasts and realized the only possible explanations were of the nefarious variety. Someone was messing with me. Someone who probably wanted me to wander beyond the safety of my doorway. But that wasn't happening. The coffee was helping, but the fear is what really sobered me up. I dialed 911 and left my finger on the call button before looking out the peephole. But it was pitch black out there. I thought I saw a shadow outline of someone tall, bulky, but it could have just as easily been my paranoid imagination. It was just too dark to be certain, and everything was happening so fast. No more than 20 or 30 seconds passed from the first knock to the last. It ended the very instant I reached over and flipped on the porch light. I never even looked away from the peephole. Everything just fell silent in the same second that I saw no one was there again. My door is centered on the porch. There's 12 feet on each side and 16 feet out. Even if someone could jump at the exact right moment, they would never make it before I saw them. I couldn't call the police and say nobody is pounding on my door, and I didn't want to call my family. They would have just thought I finally snapped. I'd probably still be in a psych ward. I didn't know what to do, so I went back to drinking my coffee. The more I sobered up, the more I wondered if maybe I had snapped. Maybe I should have called my dad. I stared at his number, trying to work up the courage to press call, when I noticed the no service symbol at the top. That was a fairly rare occurrence. It never lasted more than a couple of minutes, but even when I restarted the phone, there was still no service. It was 11:55 by then. I didn't give a shit about New Year's anymore. I just wanted to go to bed, but I was too frightened of waking up to the sound of those damn knocks. The coffee was running straight through me. I wanted to avoid going to the restroom because I knew the knocking would start back the moment I did. But I was wrong about which door. I shut the bathroom door behind me, and the very second I began to relieve myself, bam, bam, bam. And that's when I screamed. No one else was supposed to be in my house, but someone was banging on that door hard enough to make it shake in its hinges. Luckily, I was in the best possible place for my bladder to void itself. I didn't have a choice. I couldn't stay locked in my bathroom all night with that incessant banging, so I grit my teeth, ripped open the door, and whimpered at absolutely nothing. Then, as I stepped into the hallway, a blast of cold air rushed through me, and my heart stopped as I heard the sound of a New Year's party fill my home. I was so shocked, I didn't realize what happened until I saw the TV on and at max volume. It showed the ball dropping in Times Square. I rushed to turn it off, but the power button wasn't working. I had to unplug it. This was genuinely the most terrifying night of my life. Nothing else happened after that, but I stayed awake all night, dreading what would happen next. Maybe I really am just cursed when it comes to New Year's. friends, it appears we've reached the end of tonight's episode, but don't miss a brand new one every Friday night and a new double feature every Sunday and Wednesday. Be sure to like this video, talk to me in the comments, and tap the bell so you never miss a thing. I sure do appreciate all of it, and I can't thank you enough. A big thanks to those who shared their stories and to all of you for listening. A huge shout out to all of my patrons whom I appreciate so very much. Tracy S., Monica L., ZOEWATT, Shelly B., Donald C., Rat Girl, Alicia S., Aaron G., Nikki H., Mr. Revenant, and Naz K. If you want to support the Darkest Hour in other ways, consider joining my Patreon. Check out patreon.com/thedarkesthour or click the link in the description to learn more. Do you have stories like these? I'd love to share them. Send them to me, amandadarkesthour@gmail.com, or on the Darkest Hour subreddit, the Darkest Hour YT. Happy New Year, everyone, and stay spooky.